Hi, this is Capi from Always in Stitches, and we are promoting a program this year called Capi's a Bag. It's a monthly program where we're going to feature a different pattern each month and give you the opportunity to see some tips and tricks on how to make the pattern. So this month we're going to be doing the lined drawstring bag pattern. It's by Jeni Baker. Love this pattern. It has some great variations in it, and she has an absolutely outstanding video on her YouTube station that is exactly step by step how to cut it, how to assemble it, and how to make it turn out lovely. So I'm not going to duplicate some of the things she does, but I am going to expand a little bit on some of the things that I found when making these bags that I thought was helpful. But, you know, kudos to her. Great pattern, great demo on it. I really was impressed with the way this pattern's written, and I do a lot of bag patterns, so that's why they call me the bag around here. So just to kind of touch on some things to make sure you're clear, it takes basically 3 fabrics when you make this particular project. You don't have to use 3 fabrics, you could use all the same, but it's designed for 3 fabrics. And so for instance, if I picked these 3 fabrics to make my bag, I might want to use one for the outside. Well, it happens to be directional. Okay? So I have to think about that when picking the fabric, which way I'll cut it. And then I might use this one for the trim and this one for the lining. Now, let me show you a bag right here. And this is just an option. This is some fabric we have in our store. It happens to be in our clearance department right now. But let me show you this bag that I made. This one happens to be what's called the project bag because this comes in several sizes. 7 sizes. This is the project bag. You notice how this is directional? So the first time when I cut it out, and these are my scraps, I didn't pay attention to the direction, and I cut it out going the wrong way. So I would have had this piece, and my deer would have been laying on their heads, which wouldn't work. So you have to be aware when you're cutting your fabric, look at the direction of the fabric. And in the pattern, there's a common dimension. This one is a width, this one is the same width, and the interior lining is the same width. So when you look at that number, that's where the direction needs to be going of the pattern dropping down from that width. So I just want you to be aware, don't do what I did. Well, I could have made it this way.
They're taking naps.
They're taking naps. They're sleeping deer. So if your fabric is directional, be aware of that. Look closely at your pattern so that you get things going the right way. See, these would have been the right direction, but those were not. So just be aware of that. That's one of the things that I didn't catch on till it was too late. And then what she has you do to lay this project out, and I'm just going to reiterate again because it was a little confusing to me when I first looked at the pattern. She has you lay these pieces out so that this is the front. So those are my 2 front pieces. That's the exterior. This is the trim piece. Now this happens to have words on it, so I'm going to again have to be careful what direction it goes. So here we go. I'm going to put the words, so this is the top and that's the bottom of the outside. And then what goes between that is the lining. So it's really kind of an ingenious way she puts this together. So then I'm going to have my 2 pieces that are the lining, and I'm going to sew those in here and in here. So you have this big long piece, and like I said, you need to go to her video because she'll show you how to put this piece, this piece, this piece, this piece, this piece, and this piece, and you sew that into one long length. And once I sew all those pieces together, then I have this. So here's another one that I've done, and you can see there's the outside, outside, trim, trim, inside, inside. Okay? And I take that long tube and I fold it in half, and I'm going to sew around here. But in order to sew around and leave an opening for the ties, I have to measure this little distance here. And that's where I use this ruler. This is one of my most favoritist rulers. Most favoritist, I don't know that that's a word, but I'm making it a word. This is the Creative Grids 5.5 inch ruler. I use this constantly when making handbags and other quilts and things. This just has a great size in it. So what I'm going to do to get, I have to mark a 1-inch place that I'm not going to sew. And so I'm going to set my ruler on here, and I'm going to put the edge of the ruler on that seam and see where the edge of the ruler lands on this seam, and it's 3.5 inches. It's upside down for you, so I'm going to go this way so you can see. There we go. 3.5 inches from here to there is 3.5 inches. See that? And then I'm going to take that 3.5 inches. Half of 3.5 is 1 3/4. I did the math. And that's the center of where this is. Right here is 1 3/4. Get a pointer. 1 3/4 is the center. Right there, okay? 1 3/4. And I'm going to go 1/2 inch either way from there, from that center point. And I'm going to mark a line. And I want to mark that line fairly long on both of these because I'm going to run my sew over that line. I'm going to have to stop, but I need to see it beside my presser foot. And I'll show you what I mean here in a minute. So we're going to go to the sewing machine, and I'm going to show you how we sew this.
Here we sew.
Here we sew. Let me take those off there for you. This is where you're going to get to edit, baby. There we go. Okay. That's the next parts when we do the straps. So you have to leave an opening at the bottom of this side you sewed together when you were making it already. Those were because you sewed it all in one long strip. But you're going to leave about a 3-inch opening at the bottom of what is the outside of the bag. Again, her video is so outstanding on this. And I'm going to, so you guys can watch her video on how to assemble it, but I want to show you how I do these quick little, this is where I don't sew up to that edge. So I have a line here where my opening is in the bottom. See, there's a line there and a line there, so I know where to stop and start. And she recommends a 1/4 inch hem seam on this, which I think is fine, and you don't need a lot of space. And the stitch that I'm going to use on the machine locks at the beginning and locks at the end when I stop. And that's just because I want all this to be secure. So you can see it stops and starts and locks itself. And I stop about a 1/4 inch. And I turn. My fabric's sticking out a little bit, that's okay. And here we go. Let's go Katie bar the door. We're going to go really fast till I get to that point. So as I get closer up here, I want to show you, I'm going to stop right on that edge and lock that stitch again. So I've stopped right at that 1-inch point. Okay? And then I'm just going to start again right on that mark, and I'm going to lock that stitch again. I want it to lock in because that is going to become like a seam in there. And I'm just going to sew to the end. I literally, you can make one of these once you've, like, from cutting it out all the way to making it within about 30 minutes. They go really fast. That's what I like about them. Now, here's my concern, because I'm an old school seamstress. I have basically what's going to be exposed here as a raw open edge that will never have a finish on it, and the straps are going to run in and out of it. You could put a little fray check on this edge, which might not be a bad idea if you're going to be pulling the strings a lot. I would suggest it. What I have done on all the bags that I made was I just flipped this seam back like this, just basically opened it up. Now you can't press it out open because you don't have a way to get in there because it's sealed like a big tube all the way around. So basically I'm going to just go in there and do this. Now you see my stitches my lines disappeared. That's because I used what's called a friction pin. That's this right here. Friction is what it's called. We sell these in the store. I suggest if you're going to use them, you be familiar with the fact that they have the potential to take out the color in your fabric. These were not designed to be used with fabric, this particular brand, the Pilot Friction pen. They were designed for paper, and the quilting industry took them over and said, oh, let's use them. And you can almost see a little bit where it's lifted the color out of my fabric, and it will do that. So if you use it on a place where, like this is on the back side, I don't care. If I had to use something like that I wanted to be sure is going to be on the front, and you'll see in a minute why I'm going to want one on the front, I would use something like this chalk where the chalk can be brushed off. But be aware that if you're using these pens, they have the potential to take the color out of your fabric. So be real careful with that. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm just going to fold this seam open like that. And it just makes it easier when I put the tie in there for it to stay. I tell you what's fun with those friction pens though, if you've got kids, you can write them like a note on a piece of fabric or even a piece of paper, iron it and it disappears, and then put it in the freezer and it appears back. Because if it gets below freezing, the lettering will appear again. So see, now I have that so that it almost looks like a finished seam. In a perfect world, I'd split that back open and I would make like a buttonhole there, but she doesn't recommend that. I'm encouraging maybe a little fray check on the corners so it doesn't cause you trouble. But once you've done that part, then you have to do what's called a gusset. And when you say the word gusset, people...
I'm scared.
Yeah, exactly. Even Peter's scared. So let's go over to the cutting table. Let me show you how you do a gusset. So for each of her bags, she gives you the dimension that your gusset needs to be. So depending... And let me just show you. We've got all different sizes. We've got this bag, and you see you end up with a gusset that's, I think, 3 inches. I think that was a 3-inch one. Yeah, that's a 3-inch one. So they're different depending on the bag. Look at this teeny tiny bag. This one was just a little bitty one. This one I made out of, it has flannel inside, so that if it had jewelry in it, because I'm thinking it would be for a little jewelry bag. So these are all the same pattern. They're just using different fabrics. And with this one, if you look at it, so that's the front. This fabric was directional, but I didn't want it real obvious that there were 2 parts to it, so I just turned the trim part going the opposite direction. So that's one way, that's another way, but it's the same fabric. What's another one? Here's the artist's bag. Okay, and see, it's got a gusset on it too. And again, all these dimensions are in your pattern, so that's why you want to get the pattern. We have them at our store, or you can buy them online. We'll put the link in the video. That's the word. So what you want to do when you do a gusset is you take the 2 pieces of fabric and you pull them apart. Kind of like...
It's like getting 2 plastic bags apart.
It is!
Like when you're trying to get groceries.
Yeah, and you know what?
Like the bananas?
Yeah. Somebody told me a trick is because you can't lick your fingers anymore because of COVID. They said go over to the fruits and vegetables and touch a vegetable or a fruit that's got water on it and use that for your water. And I was like, oh, that's great. So that everybody's touched their vegetables with their dirty hands. I'm not sure that's a good thing. Oh, well, anyway. So I've pulled that apart now, and I have this kind of angled point is the only way I know to describe it like that. That's the side. I have this point. And what I want to do is take these 2 fabrics and kind of nest one going this way, the one on the bottom going that way. So that when you put that together, all I can tell you is you can kind of feel where those 2 seams are now nesting together with each other.
I don't think I've thought of doing the nesting of the seams trick on that. That's a good technique.
Yeah, it gets you a tighter, and she talks about that in her video too. But yeah, you get a nice tight line because you really want those lines to match up, okay?
And you can feel it underneath.
You can feel it. You can feel it when it's laying on there like it should be. And then I'm going to take my ruler, and this is where I like my Creative Grids ruler. So let's say I want this to be a 3-inch line here. I have this line here. I put it there, and then I'm going to put this all the way down till it's right on 3-inch. And this line here, see this diagonal line? Lines against the side of that triangle, and then this sits right on that corner there. So I have exactly what I want, 3 inches from this point.
So I have a confession.
What's that?
I have that ruler. I was in your bag class when we were making that toe.
Yes.
And we had to do this.
Yes.
And I never thought of using the diagonal.
That's what it's for.
I just took the seam here.
Yeah.
And then kind of got it to where it somewhat matched up. But I never thought, I love the
that's
diagonal
what the diagonal's for. Yeah, that's the tip.
I could never figure out why they're on the rulers.
All right, there you go. Well, they got lots of purposes. So now I'm going to use this. Again, I'm using a friction pin, but this has to do with the fact that I know it's going to not show, so I don't care. And there's my line. Now, I also will take and clip these corners, okay? Because that tends to want to wiggle. It wants to escape.
By the time you get it to the sewing machine, it moved.
Right. Now, I'm going to do that on all 4 corners of this bag, okay? The interior part, the exterior part, all 4 corners. And then you just sew across that line, okay? I'm going to sew right across there. So I'm going to sew across it real quick. I'm not going to do all 4 of these on the video, but...
Because the other 3 will be identical.
That will be identical. Everybody gets done the same way. But I will tell you, sewing across this, you definitely want to lock the stitches at the beginning of this because there's a little bit of stress there. And if that's not locked, it can come undone. Let's go back and lock it. So there. Now I locked that stitch at the end. And it just helps secure it. So there's my, right on that line, it's gone, okay? And now, when I do all 4 corners, I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna cut that open. See there? Wah, wah, wah. I wouldn't be using these scissors normally. This is what was handy, so I grabbed them. Obviously, these are not for cutting fabric. Oh my gosh, that's hysterical. Why not to use little bitty scissors? But look, they're a flamingo and they have a cute fob on them.
Oh, let's look at the fob.
Let's look at the fob and see.
Hold on, this is worth...
This is worth the price of admission.
What is that a fob of?
That's peyote beading.
Is that a sandcastle?
It is a sandcastle.
Did you make that?
I did. And we've got those kits.
Beads.
Yep, all those tiny beads. So that's a fun little... That's a brainless project that we sit and do. Okay, so now when I turn this, and I would show you we turn all 4 of them, then that's going to give me my bag that has a gusset. That's called a gusset. And that is the technique. So each bag we do every month, we're trying to teach you a new technique. And so gusset is where we're starting. Because I honestly don't think there's a bag that you make that there's not some variation of a gusset. Now, the other way you can make a gusset, I'm going to show you this. Because let's just pop over here. We're on our little rolly chairs. We'll roll on over here. The other way you can make a gusset, and this is why I use the daylights out of this ruler, is I can also take this ruler and I can cut, and I'm going to take, and I'm going to, there's my seam, where I stitched, and I'm going to put and do a 1.5 inch and cut a square out of that corner. That rotary cutter right there beside you. If we can grab that and not go to...
That's a big boy.
That's a big boy, but we'll make it work. So, I can take and cut a gusset like this. This will be a trick.
I always like how this works. It's like magic.
Well,
You don't think it's going to make a big gusset until you make the gusset.
Right. So I cut that. Typically, if you cut it with rotary cutter, you got to be real careful because you don't want cuts this way or this way because it weakens that gusset. So I was real careful just to roll right up. It's not my first rodeo on that one.
Somebody has experience cutting out
I have
templates for English paper piecing.
Well, no, that has to do with gussets.
Oh.
So I think 1.5 inches might be about right. So now, instead of trying to find that point in that mysterious place that I couldn't feel, now I have a hole there. And I can pull this open like this. And I kind of like this way better, really. And I can open that up, and then I can flatten this seam. And this is especially nice if you use a material that's heavier. So if I was working in a piece of vinyl or a piece of maybe twill, cork, tweed, something heavier, I would definitely prefer this because I won't have as much bulk because that's open instead of layering this. See the difference? So that's one of the things in her when she does it, she doesn't really talk about different patterns or different materials. So now I'm going to sew that, and I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam. So let me just show you how that sews real quick. So we're all on the same page. And this, there is not a right or wrong way about making a gusset. Either one of these work. And I don't think one's better than the other. It just depends kind of on the material.
It sounds like, yeah, you're doing it specific upon the material that you're using.
Right, yeah. So we can lay that flat, seeing it's flat underneath. And that's kind of one of these things where I really want to keep it as flat as I can. And now I'm just going to do it again. So that one's a little nicer if you've got a lot of bulk, okay? It still gets you the same result. See, I've still got a gusset there.
You know, this reminds me of the time when we did that clam pouch.
Yes.
Out of vinyl.
Yes.
Was this the technique you had us use?
Yes.
Because it was vinyl?
Yes, and it cuts it out. The other thing is if you've got a lot of like lining or this bag has no lining, has no fleece, has nothing in it. But when you start putting stabilizers and things, you might want to trim all that out before you sew this together. So, anyway.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Okay, so we're going to turn this right side out then. And at that point, then basically, you're going to have to do the part for your strap. Now, when you turn this right side out, because I would have done all 4 corners at some point or another, somehow, somewhere. I need to not put that in there. So when I've done all 4 corners, I'm going to turn it right side out, and I'm going to press this pretty good because I want to make sure where I left that opening. See, there's my little opening. See my little hole? I want to make sure that lays nice and flat because I've got to run a string through there at some point here. So I'm going to pull this out. And see how I'm going to lay that flat, and I'm going to really press this. Okay. I'm going to do this way too. I want the side is the most important because that's the part where I want that to lay good and flat. See, that's basically open. It just bothers me it's not sewn. I don't want to have that unsewn because I have a raw edge there. So a little fray check, you know, just drop a little fray check on it. You could zigzag it before you sewed it together. That's another way. Before you sew that 1/4 inch seam. I tried to do one where I sewed it kind of after the fact. It didn't do so well. So. But you know, this isn't something we have to be too concerned about. Okay, here we go. So now I have to make my line for sewing the drawstring.
Oh boy.
Yeah, because when you look at the bag, here you go. I have this. Here's one here done. See, there's a 1 inch hole, 1 inch strip in here, and that's where the drawstring goes inside. And comes out that hole that we made. See your drawstring in there? Mm-hmm. Okay? So we have to draw that line. So I'm going to go back to my favorite ruler.
Creative grids.
Creative grids. Now, and this is a math thing, so I know this is 3.5 inches from here to here. And I went in, this is 1 3/4 is halfway. 1 3/4 is halfway, which is right there. And then if I go in 1/2 inch, that's 1 1/4. So I kind of did the math, and I know I can go 1 1/4. Let's go this way, 1 1/4. It's easier to read. 1 1/4 inches, and that's where this line should be. So it's math, but you can figure it out on each one. So I take the total. This is 3.5. Half of that's 1 3/4. Take a 1/2 inch off of 1 3/4 is 1 1/4. So I'm going to come in 1 1/4 inches from here to the line on all of these now, on this particular size. So the different size bag have different sizes of trim. So you're not even getting close to knowing what the pattern is because every single one is different.
Every one of them.
Every one of them is different. And the other part is she gives you instructions on how to make a custom-sized bag too, which I think is pretty cool.
That's worth the price of the pattern.
Exactly.
Right.
And the other thing I want to check is make sure that opening lines up with where I'm making the hole. So see where my opening is there, and I'm making that line where I'm going to sew to create the place for the drawstring to go through. So I'm going to start drawing a line. Now this is one that If I iron this, it's going to be permanent.
Oh, look at that.
But if I brush it,
this is one
it
of those
goes away.
Brush.
Yes. So I'm making my line.
That makes a really nice line.
It does make a nice line.
I never liked chalk pencils because
I love this
they didn't make a nice line, and this is very accurate.
Yep, it's very clean. And so, and see, and it matches up with my hole.
Nice.
Okay, so do the other thing on the other side. Gonna go 1 1/4 again. And so you see this little ruler? This is why I'm loving this little ruler.
Got that nice edge.
It's got a nice edge. It's got a nice, it's readable. It's got angles and sizes that I can use. I'm not trying to manipulate some great big long honking thing that's too big for my space. So this 5 1/2 inch ruler, everybody should have one of these. If you don't get it, you'll be glad you did. Okay. And now what I need to be sure I don't forget to do is to stuff the inside into the bag, because I'm working on the outside. So there's my gussets. Now my inside has become, it's all the bag. See, I'm almost a bag now. I am a bag. I'm always a bag. But now this is almost a bag. And what I'm going to do is press this so it stays.
When does a sack become a bag?
Yeah, really? That's a hard question, huh? Okay, so I'm going to press this in place just to make sure that edge is good. And you can actually put a little line of top stitching across here. I have done that just because I don't want that to shift. But the main thing I want to do is get the tube ready for the drawstring to go through. So stuffed inside, there's the outside. So now that big long loop has just been stuffed inside itself. So that's how you get your bag. And then, now here's where having a free arm is a great opportunity, because I'm going to have to go down in that little hole. My machine doesn't have a free arm. This one does, but the machine I sew on at home does not. And you can work around a free arm. All you got to do is just be sure you move the fabric out of the way, because I only want to sew through the top layer and through the inside layer. That's it. I don't want to sew through all 4 layers of fabric. I want to make a tube around here. So see this around here, we're going to sew around that and make a tube. So you've got a free arm. I could probably take this little puppy thing out here.
Well, can you do it?
I'll show you how I do it. But
yeah, if we demonstrate it this way, then somebody who doesn't have the free arm, they'll be like, oh, hey, I can do this.
So I'm going to... Oops, you know I didn't do transfer with those lines. I got to transfer the lines either side too. I only did them on one side. We got to do them on both sides.
Transfer.
Lines on this side. So I'm going to go back to my 1 1/4 and make some more lines.
Please hold while your call is transferred.
Please hold while your call. Yeah, right here. 1 1/4. There's my 1 1/4.
You know, it has a nice satisfying sound.
It does. You know what it is? It's at the old tailor's. It's like the old tailor's roll. Remember how you used to have those for making garments? Yeah. There we go. So yeah, typically it's about 1 1/4, depending on the bag size, but you can figure out where to get a 1 inch hole. And see how it lines up with my opening there? That's just the best. That's what you want. All right, now we're going to sew all the way around. And I like to start kind of in the middle here, not at the seam, because I want to go over that seam with a solid stitch. I don't want to break there. So see, the bag is kind of pulled up. I'm just sewing through 2 layers. So here we go. Blocking that stitch. And I'm going to go all the way around. Oops, I shouldn't have stopped yet. Keep going. I'm not using the foot pedal, so that may be kind of alien to some of you. You probably have a foot pedal on your machine and you're probably used to using your foot pedal. I don't use a foot pedal. I haven't used a foot pedal in years. Don't know how. So I'm just keeping that line right in the center of my foot. See, there's a little indentation there, and that's just where I'm sewing. And I just pull forward the next part, and see, I'm always making sure I'm not sewing through all 4 layers. Because otherwise you're going to get out Jack the Ripper and be ripping if you do. See how it's just lining up over that hole. I love how it lines up over that hole, because we did the same measurement twice. Here we go. See, this is where I'm heading to. There's where I started. I think I hit the lock button again, but you know. This isn't my machine, can you tell? I'm not used to pushing buttons where they aren't. I'm pushing buttons that don't exist. There we go. So I'm going to do that twice around there. Now, you don't have to record the second time, but I'm going to do it another time. So y'all know this is happening. So I just come over to the next line. See right there? And here we go again. But because I don't have a free arm, now if I had a free arm, I would just be spinning this thing as I go. But because I don't, I have to stop and kind of reposition, make sure nobody's where they shouldn't be, and I sew again. If I had a free arm, though, I would just be buzzing over this thing. You wouldn't even know. But see, this way I just have to stop and turn it. It's not undoable. It's, you know. I have a little machine. If I'm really doing a lot of things that require a free arm, I may get it out and use it. But typically, I've just gotten used to not having a free arm. It doesn't bother me anymore.
You know, I had to challenge you. You know those little handheld sewing machines? Have you ever seen those?
Yes, I have. Those
and it looks like a stapler.
It does look like a stapler.
I should challenge you to use one of those to sew a bag.
Yeah, that'd be a venture. You're so fun.
Sewing a bag with a handheld sewing machine.
Because that's doable.
Would you be up for that?
No. There's not enough margaritas for me to do that. Are you kidding me? Okay. So there you go. Now I have this tube. The tube that we pushed inside itself, and now I have this place where I can push a drawstring through. So now let's talk about making the drawstring. So what she has you do is cut 2-inch strips. And I'm going to stay there at the ironing board. She has you cut, this is on a different bag. I'm not being uncolor coordinated, I'm just showing you another one. I got 2 or 3 of these in progress so you can see. So she has you cut a 2-inch strip to make your 1-inch, well, it's your 1/2 inch.
Caught on that rug.
I am still cutting that rug.
We need to get the rug out of the room.
We do. So I've got so I end up with a 1/2 inch wide tube. And what I use when doing these are called sashers, and I love this little tool. We saw these demonstrated at Market a few years ago, and it's absolutely the best little thing you could ever have. So what this allows me to do is make pretty quickly binding of any kind. I could do even bias binding. But what she has you do first, and I agree with this, is fold this down 1/4 inch. Just like that. So you have a finished edge when you put your piece together. And I typically will sew that down before I stitch it all the way. So you're going to do that on both ends. So I've sewn that down. So what that does is it gives me a nice finished edge on the end. And then in order to get this to the first part, I'm going to fold it through here. So what you need to do is, this is a forked pin, and I put this in here like this. Well, here we do this first. You run it through this, folded the way I want it to the dimension. So this is a 1 inch. Because it was 2 inches, I fold it in half, that makes it 1 inch. And I pin this down. And now what I can do is the full length of this. And if I had my full ironing board here, I could just go and go and go, and you don't even have to stop. But you take your iron and you put it on here. I'm trying to do this for the camera, so it's getting really awkward. But you just take and push this, and it goes right along there. See how quick that goes? Let me pull this up. And it just makes a 1 inch strip like that. And this, I can make binding like crazy. I got onto these when the great mask making time that we had in our lives, where we all were making masks, and we had to make ties for masks. I use this thing like crazy to make
That'd
masks.
be worth it just for the bias
binding. Yeah. Now, you have to be careful with bias. You don't want to stretch it too far, because bias binding will give. That's why we use bias binding, because it's got that nice stretchability to it. But there you go.
Boom.
Boom. So I've done my
Look
half
at
inch.
that.
Isn't that awesome? And then, in order to get the next phase, I'm going to do this part. Like that. Now, I like having that seam. I could probably do it from here, from the 2-inch spot, and not even have to do the double part, but I want that crease in there to have that sharp edge. So now we're going to do this way. It's still faster than me trying to do it by hand and burning my fingertips.
Mm-hmm. There's a little dance you have to play to keep your hands out of the iron.
It is.
While you're folding the fabric, holding it enough, while you're pressing it and moving the iron and scooching it along.
And you know, quilters have no fingerprints, right? Because we've burned them on over the years trying to, to do bindings.
Or like with, if we do hand quilting,
yeah,
the tips,
the
needles are pricked our fingerprints.
Our fingerprints are not consistent. They have been poked and burnt to the point that they're indiscernible. Isn't that what they do with bodies? They don't want you to recognize. They disguise their fingerprints. That's what's happened to quilters. Okay, so now I have a little bit of a crease already, and I'm going to do this part. And again, this is interesting to do on such a short little thing. But see how it folds it in? And it maintains that width. And this is another one that they have a video that's amazing. The lady's from Australia, I think it is. And her video is really fun to watch just because I like to hear her talk. I love to hear people with accents talk. Of course, they say when you live in the middle of Indiana, you don't have an accent.
But the people from the north and the south say we do.
Say we do, right. So this is what a sasher does. So I'm just showing you these. If you come in the shop, they come in small sets or big sets, and it allows you to make these little shapes, okay? So I can get that without burning up my fingers. And then, now that I have that done, then I can even go down to the next level. So I can take this all the way down and go through. Find the half inch. See, they come in all different little sizes. See, here they all are.
1/4 inch.
1/4 inch, and here's my half inch. And so now then,
1/8 of an inch.
well, this is what's great for is for applique. But see, now I'm going to pull it through there, and then I get this final size. So yeah, I mean, I can start up, pretty big. Love sashers. They're a great little tool. They really help, and especially if you're doing a lot of bags that have like tubes and things like that you need, they're great for that. So that's your sashers. And then once you have that all pressed and ready, which is what I have here, so here's my little piece. You saw I did the 1/4 inch turn and sew there. So that's ready to go. And then when I start sewing, and I started sewing this just to kind of give you an idea so I wouldn't have to sew the whole thing because it takes forever. I don't start at an end because it's hard to get around that end. I'm going to start like in the middle of the tube, and I'm going to start sewing on the open side. I'm not going to start sewing on the closed side, the fold, because I want to secure that and kind of get that stable. If I start sewing over here, then this part gets real wonky, okay? So start sewing here on this side. And when I'm looking at my presser foot, I'm going to sew just like right on the very edge of this, as close as I can get to the edge. So I'm going to watch my fabric go into my presser foot, and I'm going to look at, like that's the center of where it sews. I'm going to just be just off to that edge as close as I can get. And we'll find my purple thing. If y'all don't have a purple thing, get you a purple thing. This is a purple thing. And it kind of helps me if it gets stuck or whatever, and make sure I have it in the right place. So here we go again, and we're just going to sew the length of that. This machine even sews slower than mine. It's so funny.
I could tell that it was going slower than
it is.
Both your machine and my machine. When you said we're going to put this on our fastest speed, I'm like,
we're not there.
I was still waiting for it to take off.
I know, me too. Me too. So that is another thing. If you're doing, especially when you start doing like things like this that just have long straight sewing, man, that going fast is for the bomb. But I'm just keeping this fabric. I mean, I just want you to see I'm keeping the fabric. I don't have to use guides or tapes. I notice like there's the edge of my fabric. There's kind of the middle of this side of the foot. That's what I use for my gauge. Some people, they really want to have something to lay against, and that's what this is for. You can use this seam tape. That's really helpful if you need it. When I'm doing things like this, I don't care about seam tape. But I'm going to go down one side of this, and then I'm going to turn around and I'm going to go down the other side. Because this is one of the weak points on your bag. The drawstring is going to get tugged and pulled. And so I want to keep the stitch length at, excuse me, this is at 2.2. That's not bad. I wouldn't go much smaller than that. I definitely wouldn't go bigger. Definitely wouldn't go bigger.
And is it true that every time you bind the quilt, you save your leftover binding just for this very reason?
Yep. I usually don't have enough for this, but yeah.
No, I mean, but for like other projects.
Oh yeah.
Because you might have you might do one of the little itty bitty bags that uses like a little bit of, like hardly any.
So I get down to the end, and the nice thing is I can stop right on where that seam was, where I had to, sew the little part down and flatten it out. I'm just going to turn on that end and do a couple stitches. Maybe I am. This doesn't want to push it through. I'm used to my machine. So I may have to go up and kind of push it a little bit. There's where I'm using my purple thing again. And then up. And that's sometimes your machine, because the little piece of fabric is so narrow, it can't hardly hold on it to stitch. So I just took those 2 stitches by pushing the fabric through. Again, that's why my purple thing is my friend. And then I'm going to go back down this other side. Now I'm already sewing, it's already kind of stable because I've sewed on the other side. And I'm just using this, it's like a guide, it's just like another little steering wheel to keep that going. And, if you don't want your stitching to show a whole lot, you don't have to use a very contrasting color. If you're anxious about, it's not going to be perfect, use a color that matches what you're sewing on. It's only there to hold it together. And as long as it does a good enough job that you're happy with it, it's not a decorative stitch, don't worry about it. But saying the word decorative stitch, you could use a decorative stitch on these ties. All those funny little flowers and goofy little things you got on your machine that you never use? Use a decorative stitch all the way down this tie. How fun would that be? It takes a while to do that, though. Be prepared. A lot of times people start doing those decorative stitches and like, dang, I didn't know it was going to take that long. It's like, yeah, seemed like a good idea at the time. So yeah, same thing. This is a little wide, so I'm going to just lift it up and move it and then take a stitch. And then lift it up, move it, take a stitch. And when you get thicknesses, when you're making bags, sometimes that's the only way you get through it. Because it's so thick. Bless you. Okay. Yep, she's not going to go through it. I'm going to have to lift her up and push her through. And that's just par for the course. Sometimes you got to take one stitch at a time. There we go. And now I meet up with the stitch where I started. So there's my tie. And she offers you the opportunity to make ties out of contrasting fabric or matching fabric. That's a choice. Or, here's another choice.
Do they have them already made?
Yes, we do.
Oh, good.
Here's what we have. Grosgrain ribbon.
What?
What? I know. See, I love, and I've done, if you look at these bags, this one I made with
twill tape.
Twill tape.
I love twill tape.
So this is a bag that's made out of canvas weight fabric. So I used twill tape, put some beads on the end just because it was fun. This one I used a little bitty tiny ribbon because it's for jewelry. And I actually made the size of the place where this drawstring goes through. It's only 1/2 inch instead of 1 inch because it was such a tiny little one, it didn't need it. But that works for a drawstring. So yeah, you have more than one option for drawstrings. You might have something fun. Here's the ones that went in this bag. And these were sewn and I really wanted them to match that. So there they are, actually done the way they should be. Okay? So there you have it. So, but on this bag, I'm going to use grosgrain ribbon. So we're going back to this one since I've shown you how to do the ribbon. I'm just going to use the grosgrain. And she tells you how long to cut them. And I want to say it's about a yard. So, that's from my tip of my nose to the tip of my finger. Is about a yard on most all of them. And that's really how much you need. Because I'm going to show you another little trick. The main thing is making the same length on either side. So I just cut it to length. And I've got this grosgrain ribbon in all kinds of colors. Now, you could put beads on the end, you could tie knots on the end, you can do all kinds of things. But I'm going to show you a way to put them together so they make a strap. Now I'm back to my purple thing. This is one of these things. I had this for ages before I knew what it was for. I can take that through there and tie it good and tight. And now this becomes a bodkin. And I can run that through. Now she has you not come out the other side, but rather go around.
Much better than using a paper clip.
Much better than using a paper clip or a safety pin.
So funny story. Before I started working here when I was sewing, you were like, yeah, you need to get one of these purple things. And then so I bought one of those purple things. Then when I needed it, I was like, now I know I have one of those purple things. I know I bought it. I was like, because I remember you sold it to me.
Right.
And I couldn't find it. I put it someplace where, so if you buy a purple thing, put it where you're going to find it.
Or buy more. I think I have 3 of them. Because you just never quite have enough. Okay, so see how quick that went through there? Lickety split.
So all the way around you went and out
all
the
the way
same
around
end.
and out the same side. So the first time I did that, it confused me.
This is confusing.
Like, why would I do it that way?
Right.
Well, it's because she told me to, and I've learned to follow patterns because, you know, the pattern writer kind of knows what they're doing. When they don't, then the next time I make it different. So now I'm going to use my purple thing like a bodkin again. If you hear that term bodkin, that's what they're for usually. I'm just going to tie it, make sure it's on there good. And now we start from the other side. We go around. That knot gets kind of big. But again, this purple thing, I'm telling you what, if you don't have a purple thing, and it's funny, I'll run in there and use my purple thing in random rooms in the house. It's not always about sewing.
Have you used your purple thing to peel an orange?
Yeah, peel an orange, yeah, exactly. You know, you could. It would poke a nice little hole. It's so funny. Okay, so I bring these out on both sides. So I come back out the side I came in. Okay, there we go. And tie it off of there. And yeah, you can use a safety pin. This is quicker, I can tell you.
Oh, that's much quicker.
Yeah, I've done the safety pin thing for centuries.
I had to use the safety pin because I couldn't find my purple thing. And I'm just sitting there like.
I know I have that tool. Yeah. This is multiple.
It's like, could that take any longer?
Later on in the class, we're going to talk about a stylus, which I like a little better. This has some flexibility, which has some good points to it too. But
I like the purple thing.
It's
useful.
So now what we have, and this is how she draws it, so that you can just draw it up, and there you have it, and you have these little things hanging down. But here was my concern. I kind of want to be able to pick that up somehow. And so, because, you know, I'm always let's modify the pattern to make it work better for me. What I did was I took those same grosgrain ribbons and I sewed the ends together. So I took and folded this over and sewed it together, and then you have almost like a handle. See how that works? Where now when I pull those drawstrings, then it makes a handle. And this is the laundry bag, and I thought that would be real helpful to have.
Yeah, and you can hang it.
And you can hang it, right. But that was just a matter of just sewing this together. Super simple, not a hard thing to do. And make it so that I don't have to worry about that. Now, talk a little bit about fabric. I showed you the one made out of cotton twill weight stuff. This is. And then what are you going to put in the bags? Well, whoever gets this bag is going to get a couple pillowcases. Because I made pillowcases to put in the bag.
Nice.
Isn't that fun? And that's what I'm thinking of for gifts. So instead of using wrapping paper, we've all got this stash like coming out of our ears.
Don't we?
Don't we though? So maybe for Christmas presents this year, you start making bags.
Oh, I love it.
To wrap their Christmas presents in instead of wrapping paper. You know, save the environment kind of thing. And then this one I made out of mesh. So the lining is all mesh, and then just the little trim piece is out of a batik.
That's beautiful.
So that makes this real easy too. This could be like a beach bag. I think it would dry really quick. And because the batik is two-sided, when you see the fabric through the back, you're not seeing the back of the fabric, you're just seeing another side of the batik.
Neat.
And then there's your tube where your grosgrain ribbon's going through. And I did the same thing with this one because I got a feeling this might go on my cruise with me for a sand to pick up my. Well, it won't hold the sand, but it'll hold the shells.
It'll hold the pine cones.
The other thing is it'll hold the pine cones. I better not be pine cones. The other thing I did was I did not put a gusset in this. And the reason I didn't is because the mesh naturally tends to be a little fragile, and I just didn't want another chance for more seams to break loose. So it's not, you don't have to put a gusset in it. You can leave it without the gusset if you wanted to. And that's the way this one's made, without a gusset. But all the rest of them have gussets. So there you go.
You get a bag. You get a bag. And you get a bag.
You get a bag. And you get a bag. And you get a bag. And I got 2 more bags here to make to show samples and explain how to do it. So thanks for watching. Peter's going to have to edit the daylights out of that. This is the first video in the series, so he's going to have extra time in trying to take out the bloopers and the goof ups and the whatevers. But
Or leave them in.
Or
Who
leave
knows?
them in. Who cares? But, you know, nobody's perfect. We all do the best we can with what we got, and that's what we're here about, to help you feel capable and able to make a bag if you want to make one. There's so many ways to do it. There is no wrong. There is no right. And at the end of the day, if you're happy with your project and your deers lay on their head or they stand on their side, doesn't matter, it's your bag. So thanks for coming to the class. If you didn't get to be there live, we're glad you got to see us online. And have a super stitchy day.
Can I just say it's Capi's Buck Wild bag making?
Buck Wild bag making, that'd be it, yeah. Next month we'll have another bag to make, so it'll be a bag or a similar project. So if you're, the program is sold out in our store, but you can purchase the pattern and still watch the video. That's what we wanted to do. So whether you're enrolled in our monthly program where you come into the store and actually get to sit with me and do this live, which is a whole nother game, you can buy the pattern and still watch the videos every month. So we hope you'll join us. Thanks so much, and happy stitching.